right, we are making a pillow here today. So I've got 2 pieces of fabric and I have them set to be sewn inside out. And then once I get all the way around to here, I will flip it right side out, fill it with stuffing, and then I will stitch up the last little section. So I put the pattern facing in on both pieces so that I can stitch around the edge. The purpose of doing that is so that you don't have these edge pieces sticking out from your pillow. It's like tucked on the inside, so it makes it look really nice. And you want to get your stitches in from the edge, maybe like a finger space in from the edge. If you're too close to the outside, the fabric can pull apart. See how it's kind of fraying over here? The stitches can kind of just come out if they're too close to the edge. So I'm going to use this color to get started today. Get yourself a nice long piece, maybe about this long. If you get much longer than that, your thread will start to get tangled and it'll make it harder for you. Then find yourself a needle, and what I like to do is just hold the thread really close to the end and slide it through like that, and then hold the needle with that hand and pull the thread through. I do have these tools that can reach through the needle and pull your thread through, but I like to just do it that way. It's like too many things to hold. Okay, then you need to slide your needle to the middle of this thread, and so the ends can be doubled up like this. We're going to tie a knot over here, and then all of this is going to be used to stitch around the outside of the pillow. So we need to tie a knot. We're going to do what's called an overhand knot, where you make a loop around your fingers like this, and then you can slide the end through the loop. Now we want the knot to be as close to the end of the thread as we can, so as you pull this tight, you can kind of pull the knot over a little bit. There we go. Now we have a knot over here, and we can use all of this to sew. I'm going to trim this right next to the knot, leaving myself a tiny bit of thread so it doesn't come undone. And then when we get started, we're going to, I've already sewn part of this, by the way, with yellow thread. So I'm going to pick up where I left off. I tied my knot here. I'm going to start a new thread right next to that. I'm going to go through both pieces, and then before I pull this all the way tight, I'm going to come back through, and I want to make sure that I catch this thread so that it catches on itself. That way, if I pull a little harder on this, this will not pop through and come out the other side. Sometimes the knot can come out. So if you loop through, that's a good trick to use to keep it from coming out. And then we're just going to stitch back and forth, keeping our stitches very close together so that we don't have any holes in the edge of the pillow where the stuffing can come out. All right, let's speed this up. There's a little trick you can do. You can put the needle down through the fabric, and then before you get too far, just pop it back up through the fabric so that you have less maneuvering to do with your hands. You'll get through your stitching much faster because you can do 2 stitches at a time. Has anybody had trouble with this happening? If you pull too tight, it will kind of gather the thread, so make sure you pull that back to where it should be before you get too far ahead of yourself and can't come back and fix it. When you're sewing, pay attention to how much thread you have. We are going to need about a finger length of thread to tie the knot at the end before we start a new piece. So I might make it to here, and then I will possibly need to tie a knot before I continue. All right, I've gotten to this corner. I've sewn all the way down, over, and up this way. Now I need to tie a knot here, and I want to make sure this is not going to come out. So I'm going to go through the fabric right near where my last stitch was. And then before I pull this all the way out, I'm going to pull the needle through that opening so that it kind of catches on itself. And I'm going to do that a few times so that it really creates a knot right here in this one spot. And you can see that if I had left myself a very short piece, I would not have enough space to turn my needle around and have it go through that hole. So make sure you leave yourself enough space. Oops, I forgot to do it that time. Let's try that again. Got just enough space to come back through that opening. Okay, now this is pretty strong. I'm gonna go ahead and trim that right there. Set my needle down, and then I can thread another. Grab this piece really close and just slide it through the needle. All right, now we're ready to tie a knot over here. So make sure your ends are lined up. Grab them both, wrap the whole thing around, come through that opening, and you should have this loop. There we go. Pull it tight. And I'm going to start here, go through the back, and then back out the same side. So when let's get that caught in there, need the thread to go through its end so that it catches on itself and will not come out. Then you can go ahead and keep sewing all the way up to here. Then we're going to turn it right side out and stuff the filling inside. Alright, I have sewn all the way from this corner around to here. I have this much that is left open, so now I'm going to turn my pillow right side out by opening this carefully and just pulling it through this opening. Be gentle with it as you pull it through. You're going to have to pull the fabric apart a little bit so that it opens back up into a pillow. Make sure you reach your fingers inside this opening and pop out the corners so that it really looks like a pillow. Okay, there's two corners. Almost there. There's the other one. My stitches are nice and close together, so I can see that this is going to be pretty strong. And then make sure that your thread is out of the inside. If it's in there, make sure you pull it out. And then we're going to stuff this full of stuffing, and then we're going to fold this up, kind of like this, and sew it shut. Alright, when you are about ready to sew up this corner, just kind of check and make sure your fluff is spread out evenly, and then get this last piece in there, pull your thread out, and then we're gonna fold this up. Now you don't want to have too much fluff in there. Make sure it does get down into the corners so you can kind of reach your fingers in there and press it into the corners before you close this up. We want this to kind of stay in place. So I have something for you to use to keep it in place if you'd like, or you can just kind of hold it and go ahead and stitch it and move your fingers as you go.
If you'd like to put something in there to keep it in place, we've got these little pins. You can kind of fold it. You're gonna try to, like, if this fabric is sticking out, just kind of fold it in like this, and then pull it tight together and place this pin in, go down and up, and then it'll kind of keep that section together while you stitch it.
You're gonna sew all the way down to here to close up your pillow. Once you get towards the needle, you can take it out, so that'll make it easier for you. Alright, now I'm ready to make a little knot in the end, but notice I did not leave myself enough room to tie a knot. So I'm just gonna tug on this a little bit. Now I have a little bit more space, so I'm gonna see if I can do this. Pull it through. Oh, I can't really, but I can kind of come back through that stitch. It's too tight for me to really do it the way that I wanted. But I can do that, and then I'm gonna cut this, leaving myself as much space as possible. Take the two ends, and this is going to be a knot that you would make if you were about to start tying your shoes. So you put one end through the other like this, and then pull it tight, and do that a couple of times. There we go. Now there's one more detail you can add, so I'm gonna go grab a button. Right, I'm threading my needle again because I'm going to sew a button right in the middle of this pillow. So I'm still gonna start my thread the same way, lining up the ends, making an overhand knot. And then I'm gonna put my button on here where I want it. And I'm gonna poke through from the back and try to find out where that spot is. Now before I pull this all the way through, I wanna come back through the other side of the button. There's my needle. And again, I wanna come through this opening so that it catches on itself. Okay, I'm gonna trim this extra string so that it's not in my way when I'm sewing. Right, and then I'm just gonna keep coming through, and this can be kind of tricky because you have to figure out where it's coming through at and kind of move it around to get that needle to come up through and out the other side. Now when you come back down, if you're way off from this center mark, you might want to pull the needle back out and move the needle over again until you get it to come through in the correct spot. You need to go around your button quite a few times to make it strong enough. Oh, that's a little too far over. So make sure you do this many, many times so that the button does not pop off. Can't seem to find an opening. There it is. Okay, now I'm going to tie a knot in it. So I'm gonna kind of fold the pillow open so I can get down through there and go back through my thread. Let's do that again. There we go. And then I can trim this off and tie it. Now you do not need to add a button. The button is an extra thing. It is a challenge. So you can decide if you want to add the button or not. There we go. Got my little pillow.